Hello everyone, I'm Laura Barat from laurabaratastrologer.com, and today I am discussing Venus transiting the houses. So the transits of Mercury and Venus and the Sun and the Moon aren't as important as the slower moving planets unless they're retrograde. Okay, when Venus, Mercury are retrograde through the houses, you really want to pay attention to that house that one of those planets is retrograding through, because Venus will retrograde through a particular house, once every 8 years. Okay, so once every 8 years, let's say it's transiting your 11th house. In another 8 years, it will retrograde through the 11th house again. So the significations of that house become very important in regards to Venus. Okay, and Venus will go retrograde on December 19th through Capricorn. So whatever house cusp you have in Capricorn, that is going to become a very important area of life around the significations of Venus, which I'm going to explain. Okay, so first of all, there are certain houses that are more important for Venus transits. The first house and the 12th house are important for all planets. Any planet transiting through the first or the 12th is going to be important. So naturally that includes Venus. Okay. Then, the fourth house is important for Venus. Because Venus is a karaka, or one of the karakas for the fourth house. There are a few, but Venus does very well in the fourth house, and Venus rules vehicles, all types of vehicles, and the fourth house rules vehicles. So it does have a strong correspondence with the fourth house. Venus is also feeling comforted, getting therapy, being rejuvenated emotionally and psychologically, which all have to do with the fourth house. Then you have the ninth house. Venus is the karaka of the Navamsha, the division of the ninth house. So, and Venus, of course, rules marriage. So Venus's transit through the ninth house is going to be important. Now, in addition to that, the 11th house from those houses is also extremely important, because that is the reward transit. When planets cross the 11th house from their critical houses, that's what they call a reward transit. That's where you get your reward. Okay? And so when Venus goes through the second house, which is the 11th from the 4th, then you have you get the reward for fourth house significations. You can get a new vehicle, you can start a new therapy, or the results of therapy. You start to see some results. You start to feel a lot better. You feel healed, which is Venus. Okay. That's kind of what Venus going through the second house can mean. Venus going through the 7th house, which is the 11th from the 9th, you can get rewarded with a partner, or the correct partner, or what you had been longing for so long. You can take a wonderful vacation overseas. You can get luxuries, or any type of reward from the public, recognition from the public. Okay. So I'm going to go into these in a little more depth. So I'm going to start with the first house, naturally. So the first house, any planet transiting the first is very important. And the first house usually means a new beginning of something. Okay. The first house is the birth. Just like a return, planetary returns also mean the ending of something and the beginning of something new, as does a transit through the first house. Now, I'm not going to talk about planetary returns. That's another video. I'm going to do videos about those as well, because those are also important transits. But a planet going through the first house, especially Venus, and especially if Venus is retrograde. All right. So if you have Capricorn rising, you may want to pay attention to this. Okay. So, this is through December 19th through January 28th. So a little longer than a month. Venus will be retrograde through Capricorn. Usually at that time, relationship issues come into focus. You want to do something new and exciting with your relationship or with your partner. If you are not involved, you can meet somebody. It's definitely a good time to meet someone new that you really like. Okay? If you're not relationship centered, if that transit is not relationship centered, it can be on a student-teacher relationship because that's what Venus indicates. Venus rules students. It can also be a client-professional relationship because Venus rules clients. In some senses, students and clients are kind of the same. Okay? So that's why Venus rules clients. If you have a profession where you see clients, then you can get an influx of more clients. Okay? Or students, if you're a teacher of some sort. It can also have to do with the child-father relationship. In Indian astrology, there are two indications of the father, the sun and Venus. And you're supposed to find the strongest one in the chart, and that's the one that has the most influence. The reason they say Venus is the father is because Venus rules the virya or the semen. All right? And that's basically transmuting the DNA of the paternal ancestral line. So that's what you get from your father. If Venus is stronger than the sun in your chart, you're going to get more of ancestral genetic influence rather than a socializing influence, which is the sun as the father. Okay? So that relationship can also come into play when Venus is transiting the first house. It can also have you improve your appearance. Venus is all about beautification, getting your hair cut, getting plastic surgery, doing whatever that you think is going to beautify your appearance. That's an indication of Venus transiting the first. Then Venus transiting the 12th. I'm just going to cover these because all planets are important when they transit these houses. But if Venus is transiting the 12th, and especially if he's retrograde, definitely if he's retrograde, because it'll be another 8 years before he does that. The 12th house is about expense and loss. Okay. But this is a big one. This is a big but. The 12th house can give you what you want, believe it or not. It is the fulfillment of your last desire. And it fulfills your last desire so you can let that desire go. Okay, that's what the 12th house is all about. It is a house of fulfillment of the last desire. And not a lot of people talk about this enough. You will find people who gain quite a bit when they have planets transiting the 12th house. And they're like, that's interesting. I thought the 12th house meant I was going to lose some of these things. No, not necessarily. Especially if you have well-disposed planets in the 12th house. If the planet transiting the 12th house is well-disposed in your Rashi chart or in your birth chart. So you can get the fruition, you can get your last desire, you can get satisfied, but you get that last desire because it's time to let go of the obsession with it. Okay? Okay. And so then, so when Venus transits the 12th, you can finally find a partner that's right for you. If that's something you've been longing for very strongly, you can find a partner that is finally right for you. If you've been having problems not finding the right person, you can also find it during that transit of the 12th house. So you can let that desire go. Or you can put a lot of energy and expense into relationships, and it becomes more of a burden. All of the energy you're putting into something, or expense, money you're putting into something, it becomes more of a burden, and you kind of start to realize this, so you're ready to let it go. And you let it go in a way that is not painful. Okay? Because you're realizing I'm not getting anything out of this. So it's probably time for me to release the desire for it. So that's how that can work. You can get the last desire in, a student-teacher relationship. You can get the teacher you've always longed for, or a student you've longed for, or the clients you've always wanted. But then after that, it's satisfied and you can move on from it. Or you can get a vehicle that you've always wanted. If you've always wanted a boat or a type of bike, you can get those things. And it's time to let go. But the 12th house is always indicative of something you've really just wanted very strongly and thought about in your subconscious. Again, the 12th house, churned it over and over in your mind, and now you're finally getting it. Okay? And then you never really think about it anymore. It's released from your consciousness. Okay? So now I'm going to cover the Karakaship of Venus. So Venus is the Karaka, one of the Karakas of the 4th house. And it is in the sense of vehicles. So you can improve upon your vehicle. You can purchase a vehicle. You can have decide the vehicle that you want to purchase, or get your sights set on something of that nature. It can also be about therapy and doing things to pamper yourself, doing things to make you feel good. Okay, Venus is luxuries and Venus is therapy. Venus is the nurse. Venus is the water element that, rejuvenates us and refreshes us. And the 4th house is all about emotional security. So you can, find something to devote yourself to. Remember, Venus is devotion. To devote your emotional energy into, to try to make you feel better, to heal your emotional wounds. So a very important transit through that 4th house. Something that is going to give you a stronger emotional foundation, because everything comes from that emotional foundation. A lot of people don't understand how important the 4th house is. It's an angle, and it is the emotional state that we're operating out of. Everything else comes out of that. Our career, how we relate to other people, the 7th house, how healthy we are, the 1st house, all of that is coming from that 4th house, those deep emotional, wounds, or, strong emotional foundation, whatever the case may be, is all sprouting from that 4th house that is very, very hidden. Okay. Then, Venus is the Karaka, or the main planet for the 9th house, the Navamsha. And that has to do with our dharmic path. I talked about this in my Secrets of the Navamsha video that I just did. And if you want to check that out, it's a couple of videos back, but, I really talk about the Navamsha and Venus in that video. But, okay. So Venus is the choices we make to follow a certain path in life. It's also the choices we make and what we devote ourselves to belong to a certain type of community of people. Are we a married person? Are we a single person just wanting to enjoy our lives? And enjoy the good things life has to offer, Venus. Okay. Are we someone who is an ascetic, who wants to follow a spiritual path? Do we belong to the community of people who want to do something really big and great with our lives, and that will carry on, as our legacy? Okay. So all of that is, kind of a dharmic path. That's a community you belong to. So Venus is the choice you make for that, the desire, what you want from life. And so based on your desire, you make those choices. And also, Venus is, of course, devotion, as I was mentioning before, and it's important to be devoted to a path. And you can only do that through a certain amount of desire. Okay, let me make sure I haven't missed anything about that. Nope. And you either reaffirm that choice, or you decide this isn't working for me and it hasn't been working for me and it doesn't fulfill me. Venus, right? Venus is the planet of fulfillment. If it's not fulfilling you, maybe it's time to choose another path. And that's going to be really important, in this retrograde Venus between December 19th and January 28th. And especially if that ninth house cusp falls in Capricorn. So, but anytime Venus is transiting your ninth house, that's going to come into play. But it really happens when it's retrograde. Okay. So I covered, okay, so the 4th and the 9th. Now, the reward transits, the Venus transiting the 2nd house. So let's say if you have Sag rising coming up, you'll have Venus going retrograde through your 2nd. The 2nd house is the reward of the 4th. And the 4th, again, like I was explaining, all of those significations, you can finally get the reward from that when Venus is going through the 2nd. And that has to do with reward and trying to improve upon your psychology and emotional body and your emotional security and attitude. It can also be you get the vehicle you want that you've been working on, or if you've been trying to build a vehicle or improving upon it, it finally happens. You've reached your goal. The 11th house is all about reaching a goal too. It's long-term goals. So, and you get your reward, right? Then Venus going through the 7th house. That's the 11th from the 9th. And I just want to make clear here that, okay, so it's when Venus transits a house cusp, that's the critical bhava, or the critical house. When you do the reward transit, the 11th from that critical house, you don't do the 2nd cusp or the 7th is always going to be the 7th, but you don't do the 2nd cusp. Why? Because it might be not in the 11th sign from the sign of the 4th cusp. You're always going to do the 11th sign from that 4th house cusp. Okay, so you kind of look at it as equal sign, equal house. But when it's transiting the 12th cusp or the 9th cusp, you have to look at the actual cusp and the sign of that cusp. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. So, where was I? Oh yeah, Venus transiting the 7th. So that is very indicative of getting your reward from the path that you've decided to follow, which is the 9th house. That can be a spouse, okay, getting married even, because that's your reward for deciding you want to be married. You can get more clients and students if you want to follow the dharma of teaching, which is the 9th house, okay? Or any of those things that Venus will give, make you feel respected and by your peers, okay? That is Venus's pride, all right? And Venus is actually getting respect. If you get respect, you feel like you have some personal pride. So getting respect and recognition from others is a quality of Venus. And when Venus transits the 7th house has to do with the public. You can also receive that based on the choices you made and the dharmic path you want to follow by being the 11th from the 9th house cusp. Okay? So those are the big ones. Those are the critical ones. If Venus is going retrograde through those houses that I just mentioned, that I was talking about, you really very much want to pay attention to that. Now, in the other houses, Venus is going to also give the effect because he's retrograde. And I say he, this is another thing I want to clarify in my videos. Because some people, I got a few comments by people who are like, oh no, they're feminine planets, so you call them she. Well, in a sense, that's true. But in Parashara, and this is what I base my astrology on, Parashara and Jaimini techniques. And Parashara says that the planets themselves are male, but they have Shakti, which is their female counterparts. They all have a consort or a power behind them that is Shakti. And that gives them their power, basically. But he says the planets, he refers to them as he. And that's why I call them he. Even in Hindu myth, the moon was a male. He was going through the zodiac, through the nakshatras, having an affair with all of the different nakshatras. And that's, a different Hindu myth. But in that myth, the moon was male. So that's why I call the planets he. It's not to be sexist or anything like that, or anything. It's just that's what Parashara says, and that's what he determines. And the reason I base all of that on Parashara is because he was supposedly an enlightened rishi, just like Jaimini. So I just follow that. That's the method I follow. Okay. But anyway, so where was I? Oh yeah. So when you really want to pay attention to the house that Venus is going retrograde, even if it isn't any of those other houses I mentioned. If it's the third house, it's going to have to do with your relationships to all of your associates. And that means neighbors, siblings, co-workers, teammates, all those types of people that aren't necessarily your friends, but they're associates. You will develop more of a relationship with those types of people. You will get comfort. You may get some good advice from those types of people. Also, the third house is very much a house of performing arts and arts. So you may really want to get into developing your artistic side. The third house is hobbies. Venus is enjoying yourself. You could start a new hobby or really start to learn new skills around your hobbies. All third house types of things. The fifth house has to do with romance. Okay, so it's a big romance house. And just going out on dates and enjoying yourself and having a good time and doing things together. It's doing creative things together. It's all about creativity. Okay. The fifth house also rules students and clients. So Venus going through that house can produce more of those types of people. The sixth house has to do with health. And Venus going through the sixth is going to give you some therapies or remedies for any health problems that you may have. All right. And it can also make you more of a peacemaker. The sixth house has to do with enemies and competitors. But when you have good planets in that house, you can tend to be a peacemaker and a diplomat between people, and even between yourself and somebody else, where there had been a lot of animosity. When Venus goes through that house, it's very much a time of forgiveness. Okay, realizing I need to forgive and forget, or at least forgive and try to forget. But just, that is very much a house of peacemaking when you have Venus going through that house. Then the eighth house. All right, so the eighth house has to do with bonding and trust on a psychological level, and Venus is the planet of bonding. It's dry here in Colorado. But just thirsty today. You know, I ate shrimp last night and that's so salty. It makes me thirsty. But anyway, so Venus going through the 8th house will make you, you know, bond more significantly with your partner, or just, you know, other people that are close to you in your life in general. Okay. It can make you bond more with your students or your clients. It can, or with your father, if Venus is the stronger planet in your chart representing the father. Venus going through the 8th can increase the money you receive from the public. All right. It's money from the public or insurance payouts, any type of money from the government. That's all 8th house. You know, inheritances. That's also 8th house. Okay. And usually any type of, money you get is something that is really needed and used for, healing purposes or purposes of spending it on something to pamper yourself. Okay. And then, Venus through the 9th, Venus through the 11th. All right. So the 11th house, like I said, is, the 11th house is a house of peers, colleagues, your social network, reaching a long-term goal, gains from or earnings from your karma, which is basically your career for most people. But anything that you've been doing, all the actions you're taking, the 11th house is the earnings from that. So, that also will give respect and recognition from peers and colleagues, because Venus again is respect and it's in the house of respect. It's transiting that house. So you will finally get some type of recognition for a job well done. Okay. So yeah, that's Venus transiting through the houses. And, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And, till next time. Okay. Bye.